You're listening to the Fully Loaded Podcast with your hosts, JC Cornell and Samer Ali.
Welcome back to Fully Loaded. This is your host, JC Cornell with Samer Ali. As always, we're excited to tell you guys about our 7-round predictive mock drafts that we dropped for the Buccaneers. Samer, how are you feeling?
I'm good, man. Dude, it's almost Christmas time, right? It's almost the draft. It's finally almost here. It's Tuesday when we're recording this one. So I'm excited to hear some of what you have to say about how your draft went, and mine's definitely different than what people have seen. So I have to share some stuff as well. But
yeah, it was tough not picking the guys that I exactly wanted, but in my head, I wanted to be the most realistic mock draft I've made for the Bucs, and I think I did nail it. I obviously I could miss all my picks, to be honest. That's just how the draft goes. But I'm ready to dive into it whenever you are.
Yeah, I mean the mock draft season thing, we've done it how many times now, and just all these mock drafts that you see, there's no way to really predict. So I did the same thing that you're talking about. I kind of went into it thinking, how could this actually play out, as opposed to what I want to happen and how I would do things. So, took a little bit of what Jason Light likes to do and added it to the mix and see if it plays out that way. And I hope I'm wrong on a lot of these, but we'll see how it goes. So let's just go with let's start with yours and just kind of walk us through each of these picks and how you think it all ends up playing out and why it played out the way it did for you.
So the way I'm going to explain this, I did reach out to multiple sources that I'm close with. I used to run a draft website, and I made some pretty good connections there that are pretty dialed in on the draft. So that did affect some of my picks. But right off the bat, 26, I chose Chop Robinson. A lot of Bucs fans are not a fan of Chop Robinson. They think he had no production in college, which he had very low production, but he also had the 13th highest pressure rate out of any edge rusher in college football. This guy, he beats his man and he gets to the quarterback, but sometimes it's too late, but he is always creating havoc. When I say I took Chop at 26, this is mainly because the three guys that I think are their top options are Laiatu Latu, Jared Verse, and Cooper DeJean. And I think all those guys are gone before 26. So in order to get a guy like Latu, Jason Light's going to have to trade up. So that's where I settled in at 26. I looked at, some different options. Obviously, Johnny Newton. Everyone loves Johnny Newton right now in the Bucs Twitterverse. But my thing with Newton is he's too similar to Cansey. Both of them are undersized 3 techniques. I understand you can make it work, but this is what happens. Both of them, to stop the run, they shoot gaps. They don't man up on the line. They don't hold their guy on the line. And that could create huge issues on running downs for other teams. They could run it down our throats. That's why, if you want Johnny Newton, yes, it's a great selection. He's a great player. But then you're looking at a rotational player with Kalijah Cansey. I just don't see them being on the field at the same time unless it is a for sure passing down for the other team. That's why I think Chop Robinson comes in at 26. Jason and company, they're happy with the pick. He has all the potential in the world. I am not comparing him to Khalil Mack, but if you look in the past at guys that have had super, not great production, but freak athletes at the combine, Chop and Khalil are built very similarly. Huge arms, strong guys. Chop ran a 4.46 40, just blazed and crushed the entire combine. I know people said, Joe Tryon Shainka, it was a similar thing with him. He showed, all this athleticism. He's not on Chop's level whatsoever. And I don't think that even would make Jason Light think twice about the JTS pick. I think Jason Light would be confident taking Chop Robinson here at 26.
Yeah, there's so many things go into the whole Chop Robinson hate that don't really add up. And I want to just kind of remind people, do you remember who, what's his name? The guy who plays for the Cowboys. I just blanked immediately.
Micah Parsons.
Did we know Micah Parsons as Micah Parsons before he made it to the Cowboys and just, put on this amazing act and we saw this amazing defensive player before he was drafted? Did you know who he was?
I mean, I knew he was a middle linebacker, and he decided to switch to be an edge rusher for the Cowboys.
But did you see this? Is my point.
No, absolutely.
No.
I had no idea he was going to be the best pass rusher with T.J. Watt in the NFL.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that Chop Robinson is Micah Parsons, but again, like same school, they're close, same work
Chop
ethic.
has an extremely high ceiling and a bust floor. That's correct. That's what people are saying. It's the boom or bust. I'm buying the boom on this kid. I think you just turn on the highlights and the tape, and he's all over the quarterback. He's explosive. I think he could be a great player for the Bucs.
The athletic freakiness is a thing that I'm willing to bet on most of the time. I agree with that pick, JC. And then listen, you and I, we like a lot too. We've talked about it time and time again. That is the dream scenario, but you did a realistic predictive mock, and in this scenario, I just don't see him being there. I agree with you. So that makes a lot of sense to go Chop there. That to me, especially if you're going to view Newton the way you described, then you have to take the best available pass rusher, in my opinion, unless you want to go to a wide receiver, which is an option too. But we'll kind of dive into that in the next topic we talk about later on. But I can see how Chop Robinson makes a lot of sense there. Best player available, checks off a need. And I think he will be a good pro. So it's a really solid pick there.
And, when I talk about Johnny Newton being the rotational option, people are going to say, well, Chop's going to be rotational. Yeah, but Chop might be rotational to start as a rookie, but he has the potential to take over full time. Him and Diaby would be monsters together.
Yeah. I mean, that'd be a pretty good group, man, especially with Vita inside.
Talk about freak athletes.
And you got Cansey, and they can all interchange how they play. They're all basically interchangeable along that line. They can twist, they can stunt, they can do a lot of stuff. They could stand up. They don't all have to be hands in the. We've seen Vita Vea standing up. So to think that Chop couldn't do those things as well, it's going to be fun to see them put together if that ends up being the pick.
All right, well, I'll move to my second round pick at number 57. I have Malachi Corley, wide receiver, Western Kentucky. The guy is Deebo Samuel. I'll just keep it simple. It's Deebo Samuel. And guess who loves guys like Deebo Samuel? Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay. All these guys love this player. He has to work on developing his route running, which is fine because he's only played wide receiver for 2 years. He's going to get coached up by the best coaches in the world in the NFL. He has unlimited potential, but right away, Liam Cohen just uses him not just as a gadget player, but a lot of screen plays, just getting the ball in his hands quickly, letting him run people over, which is what he does because he really is a running back playing wide receiver.
And on top of that, you're not asking him to come in and be wide receiver one. So he has time to work on his craft, has time to develop and work on his skills. But he's also going to learn not just from those coaches, a guy named Chris Godwin, who is a slot monster and will be a slot monster again this coming season. So he's going to learn from him. He's going to learn from Mike. He's going to have these mentors in place naturally within this locker room that are going to help him develop and not be kind of thrown to the fire. You're not going to be, hey, we need you to give us 100 catches this year. That's not the scenario. And this kid fits it. It's awesome pick. You and I both love this guy. Obviously, we've talked about him tons of times. So there's really not much to say. Watch him play.
And people are going to say, isn't 56 a little or 57 a little high for Corley?
He might not even get
because
there.
right now there's even predictions that the Chiefs would take him in the first round at 32. That's how highly people think of this kid and his athleticism. And he, like I said, just runs people over. He's the Yak King. They call him the Yak King.
Yeah, man. I find it very hard for a number of teams to pass up on him, including the Panthers and other guys that are going to be ahead of us and the Chiefs in the first round. But if he's there at 57, that's going to be that's a hard one to not take because like what you said, he's just so physical and he brings something to the table. And eventually I could see him being the heir apparent to Chris Godwin and maybe even Mike Evans. Depends on how he develops and how he grows into that role, but definitely could be what we see take over for Chris Godwin, who in my opinion will not be here after next season.
So on to the third round, pick 89. I took guard Mason McCormick, South Dakota State, a mauler from a South Dakota, a Dakota school. Jason loves these guys. It's almost too obvious of a pick. I mean, people will say it's almost too obvious that Jason Light's going to draft this guy. He plugs in at left guard and he just mauls people. He's physical. He finishes them on the ground. He loves the nasty, like just to be nasty with people. And Jason loves that in his left guards. I think he proved himself at the combine that he's a really good athlete. And, honestly, I picked him with the first pick out of our 2 picks in the 3rd round because I think Jason wants to make sure he gets that guy before the 92nd pick if he's still on the board.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Like you said, it's a little too obvious, and that's scary because I feel like we've had a lot of these obvious picks that have not panned out or not been the
Also,
picks.
someone could trade in front of our pick to take him knowing Jason would lock in on him.
Yeah, but I think the Bucs are in such a good position with how they draft offensive linemen that they'll have a backup plan. But I like this kid. I think he's built for the NFL, and I think he's perfect for what the Bucs want and how the Bucs draft. So another good pick.
On to 3rd round pick 92, Marshawn Lloyd, running back USC. He is electric with the ball in his hands. He can catch the ball. He's a perfect complement to Rachaad White. I would still say SMA for me is a better complement for Rachaad, but there's a lot of smoke that the Bucs like this guy. And I know it's draft week, but I could definitely see Jason Light taking Marshawn Lloyd. Like I said, just an electric player. He's great cutbacks. He just fast. I think he ran a 4.3. He would be really good complement to Rachaad. And I was told this by an insider that I trust. Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 100% taking a running back. Not even like a day 1, day 2 running back. They're locked in on taking a running back.
I think they need to find somebody that they can put in there confidently and not have to worry about any sort of injury issues. I know they drafted that kid last year who hasn't gotten to see the field. But you need somebody that can add more to this offense and not.
Are we talking about Sean Tucker?
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on with that kid. It's a mystery. So I'll just keep moving along here.
But they need to add somebody for sure. Go ahead.
Round 4, pick 125, Jordan McGee, linebacker from Temple. Todd Bowles played his college ball at Temple. BA coached at Temple. They love Temple. They watch Temple. This kid's very athletic. He's a little undersized, but he's great dropping back in zone coverage. He's a guy that I think they would celebrate getting in the 4th round. Not that he's plugging in day 1 as a starter, but can definitely compete for a role. Just hammers guys in the backfield. He's super fast, super twitchy, 4.5 speed. I think Bowles would love to have this kid on the defense.
Yeah, it's a good pick too. He's got good tape too, so fills a need and not a plug and play guy necessarily, but he comes in, they can develop him, and I think they need to keep that room growing because that Levante David clock is starting to tick.
So now we're moving on to round 6, pick 220, Tanner McLaughlin, tight end, Arizona. This could be too late. He might be already gone. He's all over people's boards. Sometimes he's a 3rd round kid. Sometimes he's a 5th round kid. Sometimes he's a 7th round pick. I'm taking him if he's here in the 6th round. I think he and Otten would be a great little duo together. I think McLaughlin has more potential than Cade Otten does as a tight end. Definitely in the red zone as well. Not really much to say. He's if you watch his tape, he makes some great plays and he's dangerous. He's dangerous going over the top. Let's go to the 7th round, pick 246, Devin Leary, quarterback, Kentucky. We had this in our fun mock that we did on our show. With Leary, he's got all the potential in the world. 2021 was his best year in college football, and people were talking to him about being an early round pick in the draft back then. He had kind of some off years, but he played for our offensive coordinator, Liam Cohen at Kentucky. He knows the system. If he gets put in that quarterback room with Baker Mayfield, Kyle Trask, Wolford, whatever, I think he overtakes Trask as a backup eventually. But if you're Baker Mayfield and you're learning Liam's system, which I'm sure he's not going to have any issues with, but if you have a guy like Devin Leary in the room with you that knows the system and that can give you tips and kind of be over your shoulder on the sideline telling you this, that, whatever, I think it's a solid pick. And also, if they go a different direction in round 7 and don't pick Leary and Leary doesn't get drafted, which I do think he does get drafted, but if he goes undrafted, I think that's an automatic undrafted free agent that goes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, it's a good one. It seems like an obvious one too, right?
It's pretty obvious. And once again, I had a source tell me, which I don't know if the first part is true. I'm not going to share that, but he gave me 2 quarterbacks that the Buccaneers like in this draft. And Devin Leary is one of those two quarterbacks that Tampa Bay is talking about internally.
I would imagine he's got a guy in the building that's rooting for him too, right? So that helps him out. But that's a flyer pick that there's no really no risk involved there. And you bring in a guy, like you said, that's going to at least be familiar with some stuff. And you never know where it goes from there. You don't know how this whole thing with Kyle Trask is going to end up playing out. I don't imagine that he's going to be here beyond his rookie contract. Who knows? So I think it's a good pick. It's a good, even if he's not picked up and he's the undrafted free agent after the fact, I see him on the Bucs regardless of how the draft falls for them.
All right. So that was my 7-round mock draft for the Buccaneers, my predictive mock draft. If you're going to ask me how I'm feeling about it, it's on the hat. Feeling dangerous. Now we're going to move to Samir Ali and see what he's got for the Bucs 7-round mock draft.
Listen, I know you kind of poo-pooed on my guy here. Okay. My first round pick.
Yeah, I didn't poo-poo.
At 26, I don't see the best edge rusher that I would want available there. And I just think at the end of the day, if Newton is there, he would be best player available over even a guy like Chop Robinson, in my opinion. So I think John Newton is the pick here at 26. And I know you say that he's very similar to Kancey and they, would be playing the run in a very similar fashion. But again, disruptive, athletic as hell, and just a force to be reckoned with. And it's tough to not take those guys, especially if they're there and you can just continue to build the trenches. A lot of teams are not going to pass up on building with that kind of talent. And he's very good at stunting, getting after the pass rusher. Will it be a problem in the run side of things? I don't know, maybe. But, I'm going to leave that up to Todd Bowles to figure out because that's what Todd Bowles does. And I think Todd Bowles will figure out a way to use both these guys a lot as opposed to rotating them between him and Kancey. Guy has violent hands, great feet. He's got a constant motor. I think he'd be great. And he would make Yaya and JTS and any other edge rusher that we have on this team better, of course, because that entire front line is going to be better. And that in turn will also help the secondary. So if he's there and Latu's not there and those other guys that I really think are game breakers, I think he's one of those guys and he should be the pick there at 26. I'd be extremely happy if they went Newton there because I do think that's a special player and it's hard to just not take a special player if you're the Bucs or any NFL team. So that would be my first round number 26 pick there.
I'm not poo-pooing. I think it would be a good pick. I would like the pick. Listen, I'd be happy with Newton. I think it's going to go a different way.
It could go a different way. Now at 57 in the second round, I went a very different direction. A lot of people want wide receiver there, and I love a ton of dudes there at that spot. Some people even want, the center if you get a Zach Frazier there. It makes sense. But in my opinion, Jason Light has a specific kind of recipe at times. And one of those recipes is finding a very physical tackle and turning him into a guard. And this is a name that not a lot of people may know. I can barely pronounce it, but at 57, I have the Bucs going with the tackle, turning him into a guard out of Yale, Karan Amagadiji. I hopefully said that right. I probably butchered it, but this kid is ridiculously large. I think he's 6'5", 323 last I checked. He's just a ridiculously powerful human being as it comes to the run blocking side of things. He would fit in very, very well with the Bucs, especially on the left side there. He has a lot of tools. He played right guard his first year at Yale, then switched over to left tackle, 3 years total, gave up 1 sack. And very few hurries, fits what the Bucs like to do and fits how the Bucs like to draft, but he's very balanced with his size. He's not going to overreach. He knows how to use his feet properly, and playing left tackle, you're taking that and now you're not going to be able to stunt around him because of how, agile he is at his size. He does sometimes have some high pad level issues at times, and his foot speed for a guy of his size or for a guy that you want to have along your offensive line is a little bit slow at times, and so it does show that. But he's just so well built to be a stud in the NFL. It'd be hard for the Bucs to pass up on him if not, if Christian Haynes is not there, who would be my, dream pick there.
I was just going to ask you, do you have this guy graded ahead of Christian Haynes, or is he right behind Christian Haynes?
He's right behind him. I just in my predictive mock here, I just don't see Christian Haynes falling to 57. If he does, I think that would be the pick. But he has all the tools, all the tape. He'd be such a good pick in the top 50. If we get him at 57, I think we'd be getting a steal, and he really fits what the Bucs like to do. So I think that would be a solid pick, and probably a surprise name that not many NFL fans even know. But I think the Bucs have a circle on this guy. Now, because of that, I didn't get an edge rusher. So at number 89 in the third round, I could see the Bucs taking a guy like Javon Solomon out of Troy. He might be a little bit limited with his size, but he is athletically off the charts with what he can do. And he was very effective in the college level. I know it's Troy, but I think he has such violent hands. He's explosive from that three-point stance, and just a really, really athletic edge type of product that it's perfect for the NFL level. You just got to bring him along, and I think he's going to come into a good situation to develop. It reminds me kind of Yaya's energy levels, not Yaya's size, but his energy levels are the same. I think his size is – he's a big boy regardless, but I think it's more his length that doesn't really look like an edge rush at the NFL level. But his stats and his tape speak for itself, and he had 17 sacks last season. That's not an easy task. And, 21 hurries on top of that, 10 quarterback hits, grades off the charts. It's just, some of his physical limitations in terms of his length show up. And so that's why he ends up falling. But I think in the third round, he'd be a great pick and would address the edge issues for the Bucs. Well, again, you've got Newton there now. So now you're solidifying that room. So I've gone 3 big human beings so far.
Yeah, I also think as far as edge rusher at that pick, maybe Austin Booker would be an option.
Yeah, that's a good one too. I see this kid.
I like your pick. I like it.
I really like that kid. Now, again, a lot of Bucs fans have this mock draft mentality of getting a center. You want the JPJs of the world, the guy that you and I have talked about a ton, and I think he's going to be there at 92. And I think the Bucs have him circled as well because of his relationship with, Todd Bowles, having his son playing at Georgia. This is the center out of Georgia, Cedric Van Pran, who is a high IQ guy. Doesn't look like he is the, best physical specimen, but when you watch him play, doesn't shy away from contact. I think he's a little bit unhinged when it comes to the violent side of things, but he's doesn't look overly athletic. But again, when you see him on the field, you could see his IQ. You could see what he has with his hand placement, his hand strength, and just the ability to be on a championship team in college. I like that when I want to draft a guy, and I think he fits the bill. He doesn't have to start immediately, so you have time to develop him, bring him along. Maybe he does compete for that job. Who knows?
I feel like he competes right away.
Yeah, so I think he's a really good pick, and you get him at 92 there. It's a really, really good value, and I think he's one of those guys that I would not be shocked, only because of the Todd Bowles to Georgia connection. And again, Liam Cohen also knows him from the SEC. He just fits really well. He's a guy that I think will slide there, and I think the Bucs have a potential in him to be a 10-year starter, which a lot of people thought, you should only draft those guys in the first. Yeah, well, I see that guy here in Cedric Van Pran.
I like it. I like Van Pran a lot. That's pretty solid draft so far. Got some instant big boys for Jason Light.
Yeah, I've gone big human beings 4 straight picks so far. But I think that's how you should build a winner, honestly. I think and if the draft falls a certain way, that's where we had problems last year. In the trenches on both sides of the ball, I feel like is where we were most affected. Pressure up the middle, and then also creating pressure up the middle and creating pressure along the edges. So I think those picks kind of solidify some of those issues. Now, this is where my draft gets a little weird in terms of how Jason would draft things. But because we haven't gotten a wide receiver to this point, there's a kid out of Arizona that I do like. And he has a case of the drops at times. He doesn't really fit the Jason Light wide receiver formula, but he's ridiculously productive, and he fits a very cool niche of the slot receiver. This is kind of his thing. He's very good at separation. If that's like the offense that you want to run, especially out of the slot position where guys are creating that separation, he's one of the best in the draft, honestly, and he's a very good route runner. Again, he has the cases of the drops at times, but Jacob Cowing out of Arizona would be, I think, a really, really good addition. He has great acceleration for his size, and again, remember, kickoff rules are different. So I could see him being someone that could be a plug and play type guy in that spot, but he could also fill a very cool gadget type role. He's not the biggest human being. He's 5'11", 175. He's a little bit older, which is another thing I don't know about as it relates to Jason Light, but he creates really great separation windows, and his productivity was crazy, man. I mean, he had what? Let me see, 121 targets in college last year alone. That's crazy, and he's not crazy in terms of his average. I think it's just under 10 yards a catch, but again, he does a lot of the little things that I like from wide receiver, especially with what the Bucs already have in the room. Great footwork. Just got to work on those hands, but again, you're not throwing him into the fire, so I think that's a good developmental pick, especially at 125. And you do address a little bit of a need there. I don't know how much you know about him, JC.
I know he's definitely a smaller guy. I don't know. I don't know much about him, honestly. I haven't really watched him at all.
He has some good yak info on him. I like him because of that. And I think, like I said, coming into the slot, he's not going to be, Malachi in any stretch, but he creates separation. He knows how to run those routes and escape, the mud of the inside there. And you get the ball in his hands, he's going to run. So I like that pick. And then at 220 in round 6, I finally was able to find a corner that I think fits the bill for the Bucs. The kid out of Boston College, Elijah Jones. Not a lot of guys have him graded too high, but in this spot, I think he fits the bill. He's 6'2", 185. He runs a pretty good. I believe he ran a 4.4. Pretty fast. Not a 4.3, but pretty good for a corner. I like that he has good route recognition and he's not afraid to tackle. He's very good in press coverage, and again, very productive in college throughout his entire time there. If I remember correctly, he had, let me pull it up really fast here. He played in 9 games last season. He had 1 touchdown, 5 interceptions, only gave up 13 catches on 40 targets. They don't seem to throw the ball towards him, which I think is a good thing. And he gave up an 18.1 passer rating. At 220 there, that's a pretty good pick in my opinion. And he brings in a guy that fits the bill really well. And you would never guess, JC, who people have compared him to in terms of his pro comp.
Who's that?
They compare him to Bryce Hall.
So no way.
Yes, they compare him to Bryce Hall. I like what he did at the Senior Bowl. A lot of other corners also stood up and shined in that week, but he did as well. He showed his length, he showed his ability, and he had a good week at the Senior Bowl week. So I think that's a pretty solid pick, honestly, and it addresses a little bit of a need while giving you something to develop. Who knows what he ends up turning into? It could be the Izzy into this draft. Who knows? Obviously, he wasn't drafted, but I think it's a little bit different direction than what people are seeing in terms of the mocks, especially what I've been mocking recently. And then I close it out at 246 with a guy from the hometown, the USF Bulls, Donovan Jennings. Big human being, a tackle, but his leadership screams everybody who you talk to. This kid was an extremely powerful voice in the locker room, kept people in check, kept people focused, and kept people moving the right direction, but also played well on a team that was not very good. So you take that into consideration, almost again like an undrafted free agent. I feel like this one is kind of just hey, come on down. Let's see what we got here. He's a very moldable piece of clay. You never know, man. You can never have enough rotational, swing type offensive
He can
line.
slide inside. He can play guard.
Exactly. So you have a guy who's very versatile and, you're not going to always stay healthy. And I think he could be one of those guys that ends up being a surprise in camp at some point. I do like him as a specimen. And if the Bucs can get their hands on him and mold him, you never know where it could go.
Geez, just a pure big boy draft for you. It's like
a lot of bigs.
What is there? 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
You have about 6 big boys and 1 little tiny boy.
Yeah, I listen. I saw what the Bucs.
That would be a fun rookie class picture to take.
They'd have to go wide angle for sure, but wide lens. But no, a lot of the Bucs issues came in the trenches, and I think that you got to fix those things before you can get the fun, sexy picks. And I think we have enough talent in the fun, sexy positions to where if you can get some of these bigger guys and solidify some of these positions, I think you're building a really good team. Again, you can never have too many of those trench guys, and historically the teams that win and continue to compete year in and year out have a lot of these types of bodies on their staff and on their roster, and they continue to add more. We saw the New York Giants with Eli Manning continuously draft the same type of dude over and over and over again. And so, people are going to knock that Newton pick only because the Bucs have taken a defensive lineman. I think now would be 3 years in a row if he's the pick. But again, it's hard to pass up on talent like that if you don't have the Latus and the Chop Robinsons available there, or the Jared Verses. So, it'd be hard.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I like Johnny Newton. Like I said, I have no issue with them drafting him. I think he's going to be a star. I don't even know if he makes it to 26, to be honest. I've seen a lot of mocks with him going 17, 18, 19 to Rams because they just lost to Aaron Donald. So it makes sense to plug in Johnny Newton there. We'll see what happens. I like the pick. Like I said, I only picked Chop because that's what I think is going to happen. I just don't think you can pass on that kind of ceiling. I would say that just athleticism is through the roof. If you get some good coaching and put him next to some serious athletes, I just think Chop could explode. But, Johnny Newton, same things. Huge potential, really good player in college, really good production in college, and definitely would be a great addition to the Bucs defensive line.
Yep. It'd be fun. It'd be fun to see Chop Robinson too, honestly, especially with Cansey and those guys. So, all right.
So, Sammer, are we going to move to our first round targets here and our day 2 targets? What do you want to do next?
Yeah, let's just go with the first round targets. Names are kind of obvious at this point, but maybe we just kind of discuss again what we think the Bucs, or who we think the Bucs should be targeting in that first round. I'll let you kind of kick us off, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so we were doing a list of 5 players, but I cheated and I did 3 players: 1A, 1B, 1C. My 1A player for the Bucs would be Latu, edge rusher. I think he's the best pure pass rusher in the draft. I think it would be a home run pick. I just don't think he's going to be there. My 1B is Jared Verse, just brings a ton of physicality to the edge position from Florida State. I still think he's going to be picked before the Bucs get a chance. And 1C is my guy, Cooper DeJean. He's a Swiss Army knife, but when you say Swiss Army knife, some people frown upon that. But I really mean legitimately that he could be a day 1 starter at outside corner. He's a day 1 starter at nickel. He's a day 1 starter at safety. I think he plays every position really well. And obviously best punt returner in the nation, which is very attractive, and a gunner on special teams. I mean, there's so many roles he could play as an elite guy. And I think Bowles would love Cooper DeJean if he had the chance to draft him. But like I said, I don't think it's an option. So I go down to my second option. I think Brian Thomas Jr. from LSU, kid that's 6'4", 6'5", goes up and gets the ball. He had 17 touchdowns for the Tigers. I think he'd be a home run pick to put across from Mike Evans with Godwin in the slot. My third pick is Chop Robinson. He was my predicted pick in round 1. Crazy athleticism, like we said, low sack production in college, but like I said, 13th best win rate on pass rushing in college football. I think he just kind of unleashed the beast in the NFL, and it's happened with players before that just come in the NFL, and that's when they start just doing damage. Number 4, I have Johnny Newton. Like I said, for your first pick, I think he's a really, really strong player. Plugs in, could play 5 technique next to Cansey and Vita. He also can play 3 technique. I personally would see him being a rotational guy with Cansey, giving each other, time to kind of rest on the sideline and get ready to go 100% when they get in. And then my last pick, it's kind of 5A, 5B. I think Ladd McConkey could be a surprise pick for the Bucs. Kind of is perfect for that Shanahan, McVay, Cohen system. Immediate star. A quote from a source I had is Baker Mayfield would love Ladd McConkey, and I believe it. I mean, he could drop. There's so many things he can do, and then on top of that, he has a replacement for Chris Godwin and maybe the perfect slot replacement for Chris Godwin, because I think we've said this before and everyone is kind of in agreement that we're probably going to move on from Chris Godwin after this season. And then my 5B pick, I know I'm cheating a lot here, is Kool-Aid McKinstry. Just because I think Kool-Aid, there's nothing crazy about his athleticism, but just as a press man corner, he's definitely a Todd Bowles kind of guy. It's not that he's average. He just does his job and he does it really well. And I think he's, a clean prospect on and off the field and just a guy that Bowles would like to have on his team. Bowles is all about character. He's, and there's no character concerns. McKinstry is just a good guy. Kool-Aid is a cool name. I think he could be an option as well.
Yeah. I have the exact same list. Literally the exact same list. The only guy I could probably add to that would be A.D. Mitchell out of Texas. I think he has a lot of the skill set.
I will say the only reason I didn't add Mitchell is because a source told me Mitchell's probably off the Bucs draft board.
Yeah, I read some of the stuff about him, but I can't not look at him and say, man, he would be really, really good in this wide receiver room. He would be in the perfect situation in terms of being led by those guys, kind of like how Mike Evans came in with Vincent Jackson. We would have this guy coming in with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. They would really teach him and kind of keep him in line. He's coming into a very good leadership group. So I think that would be the only one I would add to that group. I was going to say Brian Thomas Jr. as a surprise pick that a lot of Bucs fans are not really taking too seriously. But if the edge guys are gone, and Newton is off the board, Brian Thomas Jr. is as good as his counterpart at LSU as a wide receiver. And I heard yesterday on SiriusXM radio, his head coach from the LSU Tigers was talking about how they complemented each other, but even calling them a compliment in terms of the two wide receivers was almost not doing it justice enough because of how well they played together and how they both can do a lot of the same things. He may not scream off the screen when you first watch it because his counterpart got a lot of the headlines. But this kid is talented. And if the Bucs don't have those edge guys available at 26, Brian Thomas Jr. would be a home run pick, man. It's not, people just don't go wide receiver, but that kid in this group, holy shit, that would be fun. And he would be the heir apparent to Chris Godwin, who you and I agree 1,000% is going to be gone after this season. Whether Bucs fans think that's, sacrilegious to speak of, it's reality. He wanted a payday before 29. He will be 29. He will be a free agent. The Bucs cannot pay Mike Evans and pay him and Baker and all of these other young studs. You have to cut somewhere, and that's going to be that guy. You get a Brian Thomas Jr., that's a lot easier conversation to have internally in terms of Chris Godwin leaving. So that's a pick, JC, that I will circle his name and say that won't be a surprise to me, but I think it would be a surprise to a lot of people. But because if he's there, that would be another guy that's very hard to pass up on.
I love it. Yeah, I think we're in complete agreement on these targets for the first round. I can't wait for draft night. It's one of the best days of the year. Honestly, I have the most fun watching this draft. I tweeted earlier, please don't zero in on one player that you want because you're most likely going to smash your TV because it's just not going to happen. I remember when I wanted Derwin James and Minkah Fitzpatrick so bad, and we took Vita Vea. I'm like, Vita Vea, are you kidding me? And then look at Vita Vea, what he turned into, and was a part of a Super Bowl winning franchise. I mean, Vita Vea, yes, is getting older, but what a pick by Jason Light. We're going to move on to day 2 targets. It's kind of hard to keep this list small, but we're going to go with 7 guys. I'll go first. I think my first overall day 2 target is if somehow Zach Frazier falls in the second round. That would be a dream scenario because he's plug and play. Your new starting center, very physical. Everyone loves him. Some have him as the first overall interior offensive lineman in the entire draft. Number 2, we're going to have some fun with this name. He's a defensive lineman from Clemson, Rook Orhororo. Like, I'm not even going to go Orhororo.
I love it. I love it. I want the whole crowd doing that every time he's called out there.
He's got to come up with a nickname because Orhororo. with the sack. It's like, I feel like I'm talking to
we
my
all
dog.
just we all just start barking, dude. We all just start barking like cartoon dogs. That'd be amazing. It'd be awesome. He gets a sack. The whole freaking stadium at Raymond James just starts just rocking this cartoon barking. It would be awesome.
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen tape on him, but basically he plays 5 technique, which I would like that pick better than Johnny Newton because he complements Cansey and Vita a little bit better. Not saying he's the player that Newton is, but he is like a true play at 5 technique, and he does this. He's an animal. He's a beast. I say beast too much. I noticed that, but
I like
number
him.
3.
I like that guy. I like him. Again,
he's good. Yeah.
It'd be like Newton, the Dollar General version of Newton, but that's not even fair because that's kind of rude. But he'd be a step below him, in my opinion, just because, Newton's so fast. But go ahead.
Number 3, I have Keon Coleman, wide receiver, Florida State. Most likely not going to have a chance to draft him. He has average speed on the field, but he can go up and get it. I think he'd be very dangerous with having him and Mike Evans in the red zone. I'm not crazy about him, but it was kind of knowledge that the Bucs were interested in him as a prospect.
My only thing with
more.
JC,
you probably know.
Yeah, my only thing with him,
know more than I do because you're a Florida State fan. What do you think of Coleman?
My only thing with him is he seems to kind of become disengaged from the game if he's not immediately part of the offense, or if the defense is able. Yeah, not a diva. It's just if the defense kind of takes him away, he almost becomes disinterested. He's not out there running routes just to run routes at that point, and you can kind of see it in his body language. And at times he does drop the easy pass, which again, we had a guy in Mike Evans who kind of had that same knock on him initially as well, and even had a couple years like that in the NFL with that same struggle. But he does make plays, and he has football speed. It doesn't translate to like running the 40-yard dash, but he does have football speed. And he does make plays, like I said, and he was he wasn't really wide receiver 1 for Florida State because him and Wilson kind of took turns doing that, and the offense was a little bit weird and wonky at times. They did like to run the ball too. But if that guy is available and you think you can bring him in, again, he's coming into a very good wide receiver room. He's not going to be asked to do too much, which I think can sometimes hinder a rookie wide receiver. You put a little bit less on his plate than you would anybody else in the first round. And I think he can come in and make plays and take care of his opportunities. He reminds me a little bit of Trey Palmer, honestly, too. They're just a little bit built a little bit differently, but he reminds me of him in terms of his consistency and the way he runs routes, things of that nature.
So number 4 on my day 2 list, I have Malachi Corley. We've talked about him earlier in the draft, wide receiver, talked about him earlier in the show, Western Kentucky. Like I said, he has a lot of development to do with his route running, but immediately is an impact player on the offense. Wide receiver 3, gets a lot of screen plays. Cohen will get creative with him. He's Deebo Samuel 2.0. That's all you have to say is Deebo Samuel 2.0. Look at their RAS compared to each other. It's like a copy of each other. They're the same player. They both can play. They can take snaps at running back. They can do whatever you want. I think it's an instant weapon for Baker Mayfield. Moving to number 5, Andrew Phillips, cornerback, Kentucky. Cohen knows him well. He's a really scrappy, physical, 6'1" press corner. And he can play in the slot. He's just like, he's almost got this like Tyrann Mathieu kind of like attitude where he's just confident and not cocky, confident, but really, really could be a solid player for them at outside corner or at nickel.
My
number
only
6.
pushback on that, JC, is I don't think he'll be there. I don't think he makes it past
that's
50 even,
but
yeah.
What do we honestly know?
Yeah. But no, if
you know
he's there,
what's going to happen day 2. Day 2
awesome
is
pick.
wild. Day 2 is wild.
It's going to be weird runs, people making up for picks they missed in the first round, the day 1. So if he's there, he's a great pick. I'm trying not, like you told us earlier, don't fall in love with guys. I didn't want to look at him because I just don't think he'll be there. If he's there though, that's a good pick. That'd be hard not to take him too, man, even over a wide receiver.
Could happen. Number 6, Mason McCormick. We talked about him. Guard, South Dakota State, obvious Jason Light prospect. I believe, he's a plug-and-play starter at left guard, and you suddenly give Hainsey a chance to prove himself at center with, Cody Mock getting more experience, becoming a good right guard. Otherwise, in my draft, I didn't draft a center, and I still really believe after the draft, the Bucs could go out and sign Brian Allen, the free agent from the Rams, who Baker Mayfield has experience with, who Liam Cohen has experience with as well. That's why I don't feel trigger happy when I'm doing mock drafts to take a center, because I really do think Brian Allen could compete with Hainsey. And then my 7th pick is Marshawn Lloyd, running back USC. He was in my predictive mock. He's electric. He can catch the ball. He's amazing cutbacks. I mean, it would be a crazy change of pace from Rashad. They would be so good together. And the only thing with him is he has had some fumbling issues. So has Rashad, and they can clean that up when they become pros. And we have a very good running back coach that will work on that. So there's my 7. Samer, let's hear yours.
I agree with a lot of those, if not all of them. I would add a couple of names to that list, obviously. I like the UConn guard, Christian Haynes. Again, I'm trying not to fall too in love with this kid because I do think he's on a lot of people's boards and that he might not be there at 57. But if he's there at 50 and you could trade up and grab him, I think he's well worth it. He comes from a very similar run scheme at UConn. He pulls very, very well. He's one of the best pulling guards in this entire draft. He's a very good zone blocker. He even can still run consistent, duo blocks as well. That's what they did in college. They ran both of those things kind of interchangeably, similar to how the Bucs did last year and similar to how I think Liam is going to do the same thing this year. And again, he upgrades that left guard spot. Day one, comes in, immediately makes Hainsey look better, I know it's hard to say, it makes Tristan Wirfs look better, but he makes that entire line better, and he's going to hold up really, really well in pass pro. And he's just such a good player. And if the Bucs can somehow get him at 57 or even move up a few spots and get him, I think he's worth it. Another guy I would add, obviously the guy I took in the second round, a kid out of Yale, I spoke enough about him, Kieran. I think he'd be a perfect, tackle to guard, Jason Light signature type draft pick right there in that spot. And if he's there, he'd be a steal in my opinion. The other guy, I talked about him as well. Day 2 is round 2 and 3, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Cedric Van Pran, I think, would be a really good pick there.
Yeah.
A really good guy to put on that list. We spoke already about him earlier. Another guy, FSU cornerback, Renardo Green.
I like him a lot. Yeah.
I like him a lot. Some people say he's got Buster Boom written all over him, but he just fits Todd Bowles. He fits Todd Bowles. He fits what we like to do. He's really aggressive. He's a playmaker. He gets his hands on balls a lot of times, and I think if that's an option there, I think that's a guy the Bucs should look at. We didn't really talk about Marshawn Nealon, the edge rusher that a lot of people have the Bucs mocked in the second round if they don't get him in, or if they don't get a premier guy like Latu in that first round. I like him. I think he comes from it's Western Michigan.
He's another big boy. He's 275 pounds as an edge rusher. He uses bull rushes mainly as his only weapon. That's the knock on him. All he does is bull rush.
But I think if you get him in and you can develop him, because I do think he's still scratching the surface. I mean, he had 28 hurries in one season, which I don't know if that's not wrapping up or if he's just creating havoc and he's just not getting there quick enough. It's Western Michigan, so maybe the stats come with a grain of salt. But I do like that he's really physical and tries to just run through you. And I know that's his only move right now. Another knock is he doesn't have too much flexibility with his body. So I could see, I've seen him mocked to the Bucs so many times. I could see him being the target. And a guy who I absolutely love, and I do not know if he gets past the Lions twice in this draft, but if he does, FSU defensive lineman Braden Fisk. This dude is nonstop motor. Didn't miss any games in college at all. I mean, if at all, I think maybe he missed one game, but I thought, if I remember correctly, he didn't miss a single game. I think he's a beast. And I'm not going to compare him to Newton, but I think you bring him in, he's going to work his ass off. He's constantly worked his ass off. He's always been, the afterthought in any program he's been at, but he is a massive cog in the middle against the run, against the pass. He can play every position on the defensive line, which when you're Todd Bowles, you're like, okay, that's a guy I want because I can move him around. I can ask him to do all sorts of things. I can create mismatches with all my guys because of his ability. If he's there at 57, there's an option to get him in any way, shape, or form. That is a great pick. I love Braden Fisk, and I'm not just saying that because I'm a Florida State guy. And if you look at his RAS score, I believe he's in the top 98th percentile at his position since RAS score has ever been kept. That's insane, considering the defensive line talent that we've seen just over the last 10 years, let alone all the way back to like 1985 or whenever the RAS scoring started. He is very special, and he took over games at times when guys like Jared Verse weren't able to, or they weren't on the field for FSU, and there is no Verse without Braden Fisk, in my opinion. So that's another target that if there's any chance to get him, I'm all in on that. That would be an awesome day 2 pick for the Bucs out of FSU. And I don't know how to compare him to anybody else in the NFL. I don't know what comp I'd give him, but he's just a really fast defensive lineman who just does exactly what you ask him to do. I'd love him, man. That'd be an awesome pick.
I want to add 2 more players to this day 2 list. First, Kyrie Jackson, cornerback from Oregon, 6'4", press man corner. Benjamin Albright tweeted out today that he talked to Dan Lanning, Kyrie Jackson's coach, last night, and all Dan Lanning said was rave reviews on Kyrie Jackson. Said he's so underrated where his projections are in this draft. Really high on him. And then another player I want to talk about after I heard that Bucs are 1,000% taking a running back. I want to talk about Jalen Wright, running back from Tennessee. Has a little Alvin Kamara to him. Could be a dangerous guy on day 2 if he drops a little bit. I don't see him dropping, but the only reason I'm saying that it's day 2 and things get crazy. Sometimes positions go on a run, and if somehow these running back studs get pushed down, I mean, Jalen Wright could be a home run pick for Jason Light.
Yeah, we didn't really talk at all today about linebackers. So I will add 2 names that I do like in this draft, whether they're, round 2 or 3. But I think day 2 picks, Edgerrin Cooper. I would not mind that pick if that's, the best available player at that spot. And Junior Colson out of Michigan.
Very similar to Devin White. Edgerrin Cooper, very similar to Devin White.
Junior Colson out of Michigan, another guy I really like. Whether he slides down to a spot that makes sense for the Bucs is yet to be seen. But I do like those 2 guys as linebackers. And one other guy that will sound weird for me to say as an FSU guy, but Ricky Pearsall as a wide receiver out of Florida. Very, very good route running skill. Has great hands. Does a lot of the stuff that the kid out of Georgia does. He just doesn't get as much national shine because he went to Florida and they were not very good, and he wasn't.
I just think he's pigeonholed to be a slot. I don't think he can.
Yeah, again, it just depends. It depends, but if you're bringing in a guy that you can plug into the system with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, could be a target to look at. Just really quick, asking you, JC, what do you think of this kid out of Utah, Jonah Ellis? A lot of people have the Bucs taking him in different spots. I don't see it. No. I just want to know what you think about him and I don't see him being an NFL guy, and I don't see the Bucs going to Utah twice after what, they already went with Hall a couple years ago.
I think physically he's very gifted. He's a big dude. I just think he'll end up just being only a rotational guy in the NFL. I don't think he has the skill sets to be starting or elite edge rusher on a football team in the NFL. I know we keep adding players. Like we're like, we're going to do 7. I'm going to add 2 more. I'm going to add 1 more. I'm going to add 1 more guy. I could add 2, but I'm going to add 1. Ben Sinnott, tight end from Kansas State. Oh, yeah. Buccaneers need a tight end. Second, he would be a 3rd round pick, possibly even a trade up somehow if Light pulled that off, because I do think you want to use those 2 3rd round picks for more immediate needs than tight end. But Sinnott could be a very good tight end in the NFL. A lot of people have compared him to Sam Laporta, who was drafted by the Lions last year and is immediately one of the best tight ends in the entire NFL.
He's the Sam Laporta of this draft, man. You watch him, and I don't think he's played football more than a few years, which is insane because of how talented he looks on the field. So, and he's smart. He's smart. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He understands, how to be a professional, even at the college level. And in any interview I've heard of him, you just come away extremely impressed. And then you watch his tape and you're even more impressed. And you're like, man, if he gets to the right situation with a decent quarterback and a decent offensive mind, they can put him in spots and utilize what he does well. I think he would be an absolute monster in the NFL level. So yeah, that's a good one to add. We could do day 2 targets for like an hour probably on its own.
Yeah, we could do it for another 30 minutes.
Yeah, it'd be pretty,
that's what makes it so hard for these. That's what makes it so hard for Jason Light. Like on day 1's different. Day 2, it's, there's a lot of different guys in this draft that can be impact starters in round 2 and 3. You legitimately can get 2 starters in round 3 in this draft. So it should be interesting to see what the Buccaneers do. I think that's going to cap off our show for today. You can find us on Instagram at Fully Loaded Bucs. You can find us on Spotify, iTunes, Fully Loaded, a Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. And of course, you'll be finding this video show on the Loose Cannons channel. Please subscribe to all and keep listening. We're going to give you fire content always.
Oh yeah, and don't forget, this Thursday, JC joins the Loose Cannons podcast live, 7 o'clock Thursday night. We'll be up an hour. We'll basically be on an hour before the draft starts, and we're going through the entire first round live with you guys. We're going to hopefully break down as many of these picks as possible, how things are going to play out for the Bucs as we get closer and closer to the Bucs 26 pick, or maybe they jump up. Who knows how it's all going to go down, but it's going to be an amazing night. JC, it's going to be fun. You're going to kind of be the draft expert because you're going to know so much more than a lot of us, especially Stank. So make sure you guys subscribe after you've watched this video and get ready to see the 4 of us all together with what I think is going to be our best draft coverage show that we've ever done. So we'll see you guys on Thursday. Any last words, JC?
Don't forget, we have a competition on Twitter. If you go to my tweets and you retweet and follow all of us, you have a chance at winning a Creamsicle Buccaneers Elite Vapor jersey customized to your choosing. Compete in that, and we'll be announcing the winner on our draft show on Thursday night.
Go Bucs.
Go Bucs.